When I first started working on this video, I was a bit worried. I thought that digging deeper into The Witcher 3 would expose flaws that I otherwise would never have found. Now, after writing down all of my thoughts on this, recording gameplay and doing research, I am relieved. Over 300 hours spent in the game, dozens of hours spent on reading the books, I can still say confidently that The Witcher 3 is the best game I have ever played. It is one of the greatest stories ever told to me. It sucked me into this vast universe like nothing else ever did. The Witcher universe is my Harry Potter, my Lord of the Rings or Game of Thrones. This game and the books preceding it will follow me to the end of my life. And even if it over time may move into the back alleys of my mind, I will never forget the joy it brought into my life, how it surprised me, made me laugh out loud and cry in despair. I am incredibly grateful for this game, and CD Projekt Red did nothing less but develop a masterpiece. In this video, I want to show you guys why I think this way. What makes The Witcher 3 the incredible experience it is, and how it made me feel. I am in no way capable of analyzing all the things that make this game great. I neither have the necessary technical insight nor a lot of knowledge about storytelling. But maybe it is this perspective of an amateur when it comes to this kind of work that makes this video worth producing and publishing. I tried to keep the spoilers as minimal as possible and did not include any major story spoilers, but be warned, you will get some info on a few characters and quests. I divided this video into smaller bits and put timestamps in the description, so feel free to skip the part about the story and the quests. Alright, enough of the emotional talk, let's get into this game. First of all, let me say this. The Witcher 3 looks amazing. The detail and thought put into this world are outstanding. Nevertheless, it is not free of things to criticize in the graphics department. Especially some of the textures have a ridiculously low resolution and are put on display in many cutscenes. However, I think this just shows how much trust CDPR had in their project, casually showing low-res textures in important cutscenes because they knew that the player would be much more involved in the story rather than searching for bad textures. But I have to admit, in the end, I did download a high-res texture mod that was very close to the original style. It is much more the way how the visuals are presented that amazes me, not the resolution or amount of polygons. The world, whether it is the icy coasts of Skellige, the warm orange light of Toussaint, or the rotten wilderness of Velen, feels right. And with the right, I mean exactly how it is supposed to be. No plant, village or forest, not even a distant stone feels out of place. I've read an article on Eurogamer, link in the description, where they asked the real-world landscape designer about how realistic The Witcher 3 flora and fauna and world design really is. I quote, "The Witcher 3's recreation and representation of a range of European natural landscapes through their design is one of the game's finest accomplishments. Not only do the mountains look genuinely geologically convincing, the woods naturally dense and the fields rolling, but everything down to the smallest details of the design give them an extra quality. They become believable landscapes and places." And I share this opinion with him. Seeing the world of The Witcher feels natural, like it is supposed to be. Even though we are set in a fantasy world filled with fantastic beasts, I can easily see all of it somewhere in Middle or Eastern Europe or Southern Europe when it comes to Toussaint. CDPR spent a lot of work on, for example, simulating rainfall and predicting where the rain would accumulate, and thus were able to realistically put rain-loving plants where they were supposed to be. According to Miles Toast, I hope I pronounced that name right, a level designer at CDPR, everything we come across in this world is handcrafted. Nothing is procedurally generated or computer generated, except for the whole game itself of course. Everything is done by hand and hard work. For me, this love for realism is what makes this world so incredibly believable and enjoyable. It is not just a random collection of plants, stones, fields and villages put together to look nice, but a take on realism I have never experienced before. Another interesting aspect of the visuals of The Witcher 3 is the lighting. In some cases, it looks overly saturated and too intense to be real. I can easily admit that the deep red dusks visible from Oxenford Harbour are totally over the top sometimes, but I really don't care. It fits the world well, it gives the dusks and dawns an incomparable feeling and a slight reminder that even in a world of death and destruction, beauty and peace do still exist. I sometimes find myself just standing there, watching the sun rise or set and observing the last rays of light vanishing behind the dark trees. Apart from those aberrations, the lighting is highly realistic and makes this world so much more believable. It was almost a pleasant shock coming to Toussaint for the first time, leaving behind the almost always dirty, cold, blue and green light of Velen, Novigrad or Skellige, and being welcomed by the soft orange and red blanket of light covering all of Beauclair and its surroundings. The nights are the only part of the lighting I really don't like. It may be lore-friendly that Geralt can perfectly see everything at night, but I do like my nights as dark as realism demands. But that is nothing a good mod couldn't fix, right? The main areas, White Orchard, Velen and Novigrad, Quémor and Skellige and Toussaint, are as diverse as they need to be, but still feel connected and like a small part of a bigger picture. The people inhabiting all the different areas have their own culture, morals and values. Despite the differences, I never felt like I was visiting another country, it was just another part of a huge connected world. The citizens look, act and sound alive and aware of their surroundings, talking about the wild stories they heard about the faraway land of Skellige while sipping wine on the benches in Toussaint's harbour. I remember the first time I arrived in Skellige. I still cannot put the finger on it. It feels like a mix of Iceland, Sweden and Norway with a bit of Finland and Scotland scattered in between. Its nature and design is the most outstanding environmental work done in the whole game. Maybe it's just my love for the nature in countries like Iceland, Norway or Sweden, or maybe there's something else I cannot identify. I don't know what made and makes me feel that way, but in Skellige I feel peace. In Toussaint I feel safety, in Velen I feel alone, in Novigrad I feel busy and stressed, but in a good way. White Orchard reminds me of how it all started, it makes me nostalgic, and Quémor feels like home. Geralt of Rivia is one hell of a man. He escaped death at a point where an escape shouldn't be possible. He met incredible people around the world, kings and queens, beggars and farmers. He fought uncountable amounts of monsters and delighted a probably equal amount of ladies. And his design in The Witcher 3 hits the nail on the head. I do acknowledge people saying that in the books he's not nearly as good looking as he is in the games. Witcher 1. But from the point of view of a video game developer, the choice to make all of his affairs and love stories more believable by making him more handsome is perfectly understandable. Again, the love for detail while designing him, and choosing his voice actor for that matter, is outstanding. His fighting was motion capture with a professional sword fighter, the lip syncing is, except for a few exceptions, on point, and his armor and swords always look incredible. Same thing goes for all of the other main and many of the side characters, but especially for Ciri. Ciri, as a child as well as an adult, looks exactly like I imagined her, be it a little bit prettier. Her looks fit her character and the things she does so well, it makes you wonder how she can be modeled after a real person. The NPCs, on the other hand, could definitely use some more variety. I often found myself looking at the same face when I was visiting two different peasants for two different quests in two different villages, with only the color of their hair changing. I do understand that filling a world this huge with NPCs that are diverse enough to not recognize doubles immediately is a very hard task and probably wasn't a priority, but only 20 faces more could have made a big difference. The Witcher game series, among others, may have a big advantage over other games when it comes to the character design and depth, as Andrzej Sapkowski, I hope I pronounced that right, the author of the original Witcher stories, already created most of the characters we meet in the game. This, and of course buying the rights to the figures and stories of Sapkowski for a mere $9,500, didn't stop CDPR from changing the figures a bit and creating their own. Geralt, a quiet, stubborn and sometimes a bit dull-witted character in the books, opens up more and more in the games, becomes witty at times, and was pushed a little bit more to the typical game hero side of things, but never goes full Call of Duty blockbuster hero. Deep inside he stays more or less the same, but by adding those small but welcome changes he doesn't feel boring or unfitting in today's gaming world. No character feels out of place or does things you would not expect of them in some way or another. CDPR must have studied the backstories of all recurring characters in great detail, as memories of the old times are often retold but never feel inappropriate or feel like a convenient way of getting the player to think, wow, I know that's in the books. Let's take a look at Regis, for example. I have to admit that I played through all of Witcher 3 before I even touched the first book. But by the time I first read about Regis in the Baptism of Fire, it took only a few paragraphs until I recognized him for who he was, as he did not tell the group Geralt was traveling with what his name was right away. So only based on a few sentences he said and a brief description of his appearance, I immediately knew who he was, because in Blood and Wine, The Witcher 3's second DLC was written and portrayed so close to his personality in the books. CDPR could have easily changed a whole lot of the story and its characters to make their lives easier, but rather chose to stay as close to the books as they could and pay them the amount of respect they deserved. A great character completely designed by CDPR's writers is the Bloody Baron. You come across this warlord searching for his daughter and wife early in the game, as Ciri, your daughter by choice, found accommodation under his roof after once again fleeing from danger. He tells you to find his beloved ones in exchange for information on Ciri's whereabouts. I don't want to get any deeper into this quest, as I advise to play it on your own. Family Matters, which is the name of his quest, perfectly ties into your main objective of finding Ciri, but provides a rollercoaster of love, hate, betrayal and lies on its own, and really makes you reflect on your morals and the ability to forgive someone for what they did. It is not only the story of this quest, but the three-dimensional and realistic characters being part of it that truly make it an incredible experience. You will know what I mean when I say that the Bloody Baron is a person you either hate or pity for what he did. The Witcher 3's cutscenes teem with variation. They can make the player laugh, cry, shout in anger or marvel at the beautiful scenery. The camera never just rests on someone's face but moves around, makes use of perspective and lighting, and does this just as well as a full-fledged movie. They never only serve as a device of story exposition but also give hints to what the player can expect in the near future. Let's take a look at Julian vs the Shaelmaar, a pretty long cutscene introducing us to three major characters, gameplay mechanics and relationships. We see Julian enter the arena ready to fight the Shaelmaar. The crowd is cheering louder than before, establishing him as a well-known and beloved knight. As such, he of course dedicates his imminent victory to a fair lady.
I dedicate my imminent victory to fair lady Vivienne.
Notice how we, just by her reaction, can see that the blonde woman must be Vivienne, while the brunette, Duchess Anna Henrietta, looks at her in almost motherly fashion, being amused by her embarrassed face.
The fight shall have to end first. We must wait.
Now we are introduced to the Shaelmaar, also known as an armadillo on drugs. As it enters the arena we get a shot from behind, showing us the tinkling bells attached to its tail. The bells make a noise and the beast immediately throws itself onto the bells, attacking them. This gives Julian a moment of distraction and a chance to strike.
Got a bad feeling about this.
The Shaelmaar, attacked by Julian a second time, counters a strike with its tail, breaking off a bell that promptly flies against the wall, again making a loud noise. The Shaelmaar goes into full armadillo mode, rolling through the arena and crashing into the walls. This crash completely frees it off the shackle of bells and leads to Geralt having to save the day once again. In this short sequence, we not only learned about Julian, the Duchess, Vivienne and their relationships, but it also showed us how to beat the Shaelmar while helping Julian. This cutscene was used to its full potential, giving us character and gameplay exposition, and as the cherry on top, a spectacle of action and great animations. A big problem for many games is that the objectives and goals get forced onto you, and even though you're set in a more or less open world, you feel attached to that red string pulling you from A to B to C. That red string exists in The Witcher 2, of course, but it is more of a guideline than a railing you're chained to. Whether you prefer getting lost in the world, immediately taking on every contract you come across and forgetting what the hell you wanted to do just 5 minutes ago, or to strictly follow the main quest and ignoring the side quests till the end, The Witcher makes it possible. There are, however, a few exceptions where quests are not available before or after a certain point, either because your level is too low or finishing a specific quest would render others illogical. These situations only occur a few times over the whole game, which, by the way, including its 2 DLCs, will most likely take you roughly 200 hours to get them on 100%, not including exploring for fun or just messing around. An interesting aspect of the quests in The Witcher 3 are their repercussions on the story, which sometimes show their disruptive power only after hours of not thinking about them. When a stranger approaches you, asks for your help, it never feels synthetic or unnatural. It is just another peasant or nobleman seeking help from a witcher in this dangerous world, and if you choose to ignore them, then do so, go on, but be ready to maybe suffer the consequences. I've talked about the Bloody Baron's quest before, and many more come to mind when I think about what truly left a mark in my memory. But for those of you who finished the game already, don't worry, no spoilers, I promised. Just look at this clip and you'll know what really left a mark. The story of the Witcher books and games is as long and muddled as it can be, but shortened a lot. It could go something like this. Geralt of Rivia, given to the Witcher's School of Wolf as a child, is the most skilled and famous Witcher, a mutated monster slayer that ever lived. One day, through intricate events, he became the adoptive father of Cyrilla Fiona Ellen Rhiannon, Ciri for short, who, through even more intricate events, is now being pursued by the Wild Hunt and went missing a long time ago. Ciri, a child of the Elder Blood, possesses powers that Eredin, the king of the Wild Hunt, is determined on collecting. Geralt, being bound and determined on finding Ciri, travels through a huge world, dealing with monsters, war, old and new friends, and the aftermath of his once lost memory, including twisted love stories and all that goes with it. He follows every small clue he can find, helps people in exchange for information on Ciri, and whether he, in the end, gets what he desires is up to you to find out. Let me open this chapter with a bold statement. The Witcher 3 is best played with an Xbox controller. I know, burn them at the stake, peasant and such, but hear me out. The best overall experience is, as always, achieved on a beefy computer, but the controls, with all due respect to mouse and keyboard, are amazing with a controller. Third-person games in general, in my opinion, feel so much better using a controller. But the efficiency and usability of the Xbox controller in The Witcher is, and I know, I say this word a lot, amazing. Every button is used, no button misused, and double or triple layouts on some buttons never feel overly complicated. The analog sticks and their inherently high precision allow for silky smooth movement, both of Geralt and the camera. Most of those flying bike clips you've seen in this video were made by me, using nothing more than a FreeCam mod and an Xbox controller. Great controls sadly don't make up for some gameplay flaws. We've all heard about the fact that a drop that would probably not even bother an infant kills this highly mutated super soldier, and that Geralt is unable to jump over even the smallest objects while fighting. I think, however, based on how the fights in the game play out and how occupied the buttons on the controller already are, that it was just not possible to allow for jumping, dodging, quick attacks, long attacks and rolling while fighting, as the Xbox controller simply only has 4 buttons for those actions, A, B, X and Y, or circle, square, triangle and X, respectively. One could argue that CDPR could have implemented an automatic jumping or leaping function, but come on, so much work just to be able to jump away instead of just running? While walking around, the A button is your best friend. Talk to this person, A. Light this candle with your magic flaming hand, A. Steal from this crate, A. It is embarrassing to admit how many times I've accidentally stolen something in front of a gazillion of guards, just because I was permanently tapping A to turn on lights. A mod which sets lighting candles to holding A and the rest, like talking or stealing, to tapping A, used such a simple idea, I can't even imagine how CDPR could have missed that one. Besides that, the controls are great, especially fighting feels super smooth and natural, provided you have some skill that I sadly don't have, which I guess is not only but to a big part due to a real master sword fighter doing the motion capture on Geralt's moves. The attacks blend perfectly into each other, there's no stutter or sudden changes of posture. Again, a huge amount of work was put into making sure the fighting feels and looks as flawless as it does. Even though the game is called The Witcher and Geralt is The Witcher, we get to play as his adopted daughter Ciri too, and Geralt gets crucial information about Ciri's whereabouts. A flashback occurs where we slip into the role of Ciri and experience at first hand what happened when Geralt wasn't around. She has abilities of her own, which allow for a unique style of fighting, which is great, but of course not as worked out as Geralt's style of fighting is. I found the passages playing as her very refreshing, as they allowed me, as I already said, to be part of what happened, experiencing it and not just getting told what she did or just watching a cutscene. Do I really have to get into Gwent? Yes? Okay. In short, I hated Gwent at first, and then I learned to love it, and now I own physical copies of the Northern Realms and Nilfgaardian set, and I want them all. And a cardboard Gwent crown I got at this year's Gamescom, which is currently decorating my shelves. I feel like CDPR just wanted to put a fun little minigame into The Witcher 3 as they did in the other games already, and just did not expect the tsunami wave of praise they got for it. And it is well deserved. Gwent is a shitload of fun, seriously. And if you tried it, failed and lost interest, don't worry, try again and again and again. And when you're finally hooked, don't forget to thank me for telling you that, because the quests and fun that come with it are exceptionally. Let's dive into the technical abyss of The Witcher a bit. I repeat, I suck at technical stuff, but it runs great. Of course, the game is demanding, but even on older or slower hardware, playable frame rates are easily achievable. Changing the graphics settings actually, for once, improves or worsens the looks and the FPS. The optimization is outstanding, the graphics menu allows for a lot of changes, and the many mods for this game prove that CDPR, while developing, seem to already have the modders in mind. And if all of those settings are still not enough, you can just download a mod like UGOM, allowing you to adjust everything you want. Now, where do I even start? Marcin Przybylowicz, Percival Schuttenbach, Mikolaj Storinsky and Piotr Muział, I googled the pronunciation of those names and I still can't get them right, created a masterpiece. All the music you've heard in this video so far is from The Witcher 3 and its DLCs. The soundtrack is by far the best thing about this game. Every track is pure beauty, connected to so many memories and arranged to perfection. The game seems as if it was developed around the music, as if the game director said, alright, we have this beautiful piece of music right here. What could happen when it plays in the game? The cutscenes, the fighting, exploring, everything has its own song, is perfectly tied into the music. It hypes you up to fight, it helps you feel the character's pain, and it chains you to your screen. I honestly don't know what to say. This soundtrack is incredible. I could never decide on one favorite song, one song that is the best of them all. They are all so different, yet easy to identify as The Witcher 3's music. Sometimes songs in the soundtrack sound kind of alike, but that is not cheap songwriting, it actually does something kind of clever. Here are two pairs that are two different songs, but share very similar elements. First, King Bran's Final Voyage and a piece with a name I'd rather not say, spoilers and such, and I know how sensitive you are. Both mark the death of an important character. The first, King Bran's Final Voyage, sounds sad, of course, but has this weird touch of hope, a feeling that things are going to get better. The second piece of music is very similar, but for me does not carry this hopefulness at all. It feels permanent, like something happened one can never recover from. The second pair consists of the DLC themes for Blood and Wine and Hearts of Stone. Both songs mark a new beginning, a new adventure, and carry the epicness to come perfectly. Both follow at some point a slower, more quiet part before jumping into the big finale. Again, I don't think this is lazy writing, it's just a smart connection between the two stories that exists outside of storytelling and gameplay. A callback back to Hearts of Stone if you play it in the right order from Blood and Wine, and a reference to Blood and Wine in Hearts of Stone. Not one day went by since I fell in love with this game that I did not listen to this soundtrack when I had the chance. It will hopefully stay with me, even when I'm maybe not going to start this game for 2, 3 or 4 years in a row. I even jokingly, or maybe not, already decided on one of my wedding songs, which will be The Slopes of the Blessure. If you asked me, Seba, but come on, what are the best songs? Be honest. I would probably say The Slopes of the Blessure, Geralt of Rivia, The Fields of Ard-Skelligen. God, Kaer Morhen. Listen to those songs, I put them in the description, especially the last one. Maybe they'll only be nice for you, and I understand that, I really do. I can't expect you to feel the same about them as I do, but the memories and feelings connected to them will hopefully stay with me forever. I guess that this is it. I've told you all that came to my mind when I asked myself, hey, quick, what's so great about The Witcher 3? I could have said so much more and I could have said it so much better, but once this idea got stuck in my head, I had to do this video. This has to be, I don't know, maybe 20 hours of work ago. I spent most of the last few days that I did not spend gaming with my buddy on this video, and I hope that maybe some of you will like it. I had a ton of fun doing this, and I guess this is what matters most. I thank you for watching until now, if you did, and I hope that you enjoyed this little thingy I did. See you soon, both you, the viewer, and Geralt. I'm eagerly awaiting the next big adventure.